So we have already go through the first two statements of a SQL. One is a create, one is a drop, and we discussed about the crude life cycle, where you do create, read, update, and delete. We already done the delete part of drop, but how about the create part? As we stated before, creating a data set, a table, actually consists of two parts. First part is you need to define the columns of that table, define what attributes are in this column, in this relation, what data type they are, and in what order. This is the create statement does. In order to get data into this data set, you also need to place the tuples one by one into this relation. This is achieved by the insert statement. So insert data basically is using a keyword insert into, starting with a keyword insert into, followed by the table name, then followed by the column name list. What columns are you going to specify and put them into parentheses? Then followed by the values. So there are three parts. The first part is you specify which table, what you are trying to do. I'm going to insert the data into this table. And the second part is the values. And the third part, of course, is the column list itself. You want to map these values into the columns. So an example will be if I have the instructor table, I'm going to do an insert into instructor with values Jedi and Obi-Wan Kenobi, and map this Jedi into. So I'm going to insert, this is a tuple, right? But I'm going to tell DBMS that the first element in the tuple is the instructor affiliation column. And the second element in the tuple, Obi-Wan Kenobi, corresponding to the instructor name column. Now remember, now as you can see, columns don't need to be in the same order as table definition. When we define instructor, we actually have instructor name as the first column and the instructor affiliation as the second column. But as long as I have the column list and the value, as long as I have these two parts, and as long as the elements in both lists matches with each other, that's perfectly fine. So I can have a Jedi specified as the instructor affiliation and Obi-Wan Kenobi corresponding to the instructor name. I don't necessarily need to follow what is defined in the table create statement of instructor table. Now you can also ignore the column list, but when you ignore the column list, it will default to all the columns in the table with the order defined in the table create statement. So if you have like insert into instructor values list without the column list, then the default column list are the columns defined in the create statement. It will be instructor name followed by instructor affiliation. So in that case, this insert statement will be values Obi-Wan Kenobi goes to instructor name and the Jedi goes to instructor affiliation. By default, you can only insert, you can insert the value without data loss. What does that mean? So if your definition, column definition is varchar 200, but you have a 100 character string, yes, you can insert. So your value is, the value is varchar 100, and it can be inserted into a 200 character string, the column. But if your character in the value list is 200 characters, and the data type defined in the table only have 100 character, then DBMS will throw an issue and let you know. If you want to insert an integer into decimal the decimal data type, that's okay. But if you try to insert decimal into an integer, you will have an issue. That's why we said it's always wise to use an integer instead of a decimal with 0 scale. Because if there's an error, it's easier for you to see. Now, you can also manually convert. For example, if you want to insert a decimal into integer, you want to use a function to convert the decimal into integer. But this conversion, we will cover that in future lectures.